So welcome back everybody, my name's Andrew and you're watching the Kelley's Country Life. If this is your first time visiting the channel, hey, thanks so much for stopping by. We do reviews like this all the time. So it's been a little while since we've done a review on what I'm gonna start calling portable power stations. The term solar generator tends to bother a lot of people, and I understand that while these aren't true technical generators, they're very sophisticated power supplies. So first and foremost, y'all, I get offers for these devices weekly, several times a week, and I turn them all down because we've already did so many tests on the channel. But I have been waiting for a particular model that offered features that I was looking for and that you've been looking for. I've received a lot of comments from people, please test a more powerful model. We want to see one that can run larger corded tools. The list just goes on and on, but a lot of people have been looking for a more powerful model. This one not only is the most powerful I've ever tested on the channel, but it has some other really awesome features too. So we're gonna hit some important specs real quick, and then we're diving into testing. Y'all know me, I don't care about unboxings, all the details that you can go find and read online. I wanna see this thing run, and we're gonna test some pretty powerful tools and appliances with this in just a minute. All right, so if you're not familiar what a portable power station is, this is a lithium iron phosphate battery pack in here, 2,000 watt hours of capacity. So it's got a very large battery. It does weigh a little less than 50 pounds, so it's portable, but it has some weight there, which is to be expected with all the battery power and capacity that it has inside. So it has a really nice built-in inverter. This is all clean sine wave. So it has 6 110 volt outlets. This is 2,000 watts continuous, 4,000 surge. So we should be able to run some pretty awesome stuff off of this. Over here on this side, you've got your charging port, and then you have your 12 or 24 volt plug-in over here. So if you want to hook up solar power, plug this in and charge off of a cigarette lighter adapter, you can do all that. By the way, there's a little storage up top. I love this about it. It comes with your charging cable. The charger is built in. That's a huge feature to me. I've tested a lot of these units before that have a big external charger, brick basically that you have to carry around. All that's built in here. And speaking of charging, that's the other thing that caught my eye with this unit. So whenever I first got this, I completely discharged it, plugged it in the wall, and this whole thing recharged in exactly 2 hours. That's super fast charging. This one also allows dual input charging. So you can combine this with solar panel. By the way, this takes up to 500 watts of solar input. And if you plug it in the wall, I think they claim 1.4 or 1.5 hours of recharge time if you really need to get this recharging quickly. Now, obviously plugging it into, well, say 12 volts right here with a cigarette lighter adapter, that's going to take a long time to charge something this large, but that's possible. You can actually charge it off of a vehicle while you're traveling. The solar panel is going to be quite a bit quicker, especially if you're talking about using 500 watts of input. Sadly, all I have is a small 100 watt panel, which is really way too small for a unit of this size. I really need to invest in a good 400 to 500 watt solar panel setup to test things like this. But 500 watts of input is going to get you some pretty quick charging time if you have good clear sunlight for the day. And like you typically see on these units, you got a 12 volt plug up front here, different plug-ins for different adapters for 12 volt as well. You have USB 5 volts here, you have an 18 watt 3.0 USB, and you have a 100 watt USB-C to USB-C. So you're talking super fast recharging of a phone right there with 100 watts. So it's also got a light up front and a little SOS function if that's something you're interested about. I can see that being popular for maybe around a campsite or something. Other thing that I really like. So the display is going to be hard to see with all this glare out here, but this tells you time remaining. Hopefully you can see it says discharge time remaining 99 hours. So as you plug in a device, it'll tell you your output wattage and how much time remains. Here's your battery capacity, 100%. Those are nice features to have. So if you have something plug in that has a very relatively steady draw, you can kind of look at it and say, oh, I have 3, 4, or 5 hours of run time right here. And I found this to be relatively accurate with some of the testing that I've already done. So the other feature that I have never seen before on one of these that I was really intrigued by, this also has a UPS feature. So what that means is it has an uninterruptible power supply. So you could technically charge this unit into the wall, and on the output side over here, say plug some electronics in, routers, whatever that may be, and if you lose power, this instantly will switch over and provide output power to your devices. And it's so fast, it should technically not kill your devices. I know a lot of people run UPSs or battery backups on all of their home routers and electronic equipment. That way, if you do go into a power outage and you're not home, want to look at your cameras, security system, etc., this thing's over there running for you. So enough rambling, right? chances are a lot of y'all have seen these devices. We want to see it run. You kind of already have a good general idea of what these things can do. So I have been successful in getting this to spin over before on less powerful units, but you can kind of tell it's running at a much lower RPM, and I just don't think it could handle the load. So this saw and my table saw over here are both 15 amps, but you got to understand whenever you put them into wood or put that extra load on them, that can spike up for a short period of time, and it requires a bunch of power to run tools like this. So where I can see a lot of people wanting a power supply like this is off-grid situations, maybe on the backside of the property or building an off-grid cabin, camping, things like that. But a lot of people have reached out and asked, can it run these more powerful tools? Well, we're about to find out. So let's put this thing to the test. A 10-inch compound miter saw, a huge 4x4 block of wood. Let's bury it in it. Let's see if it trips out. Let's see if it'll run. Not a problem. I was kind of concerned about that when I started burying in the wood, if this thing was actually going to trip out. All right, so here we are with another 15 amp tool. This is about as high of an amperage as you're going to find because, well, typically most of your household outlets are rated for 15 amp circuits, although I do know that a lot go to 20 amp. So let's rip down some 3/4 inch plywood and see if this will run through this entire length right here. As you can see, I'm plugged right into the power supply itself. This is going to be the more interesting test to me. So no problem there at all, as to be expected with a 2,000 watt unit. Again, it's that initial surge and bearing of the wood. I wondered if it was going to go over, which would roughly translate to about 20 amps of surge there. Obviously it didn't kick the unit out. So this is the one I am really curious about. I've had people ask me in the past to test a compressor. A compressor has a tremendous amount of surge on startup, and every power supply I've tested up to this point trips out. And I'm just not sure what this pulls, to be perfectly honest with you, and if this can handle that initial surge. If it can, I will be highly impressed. All right, let's kick it on and see. Awesome. I have never had a unit be able to run that. So now you can start to see where these can really shine. So I could have a work site completely off grid somewhere, carry this unit out and do some minor building for the day. Obviously this isn't going to run these tools continuous for the day. For example, this running right there was pulling 980 watts and this had 2 hours of runtime, 2,000 watt hour capacity. Also, there's some loss of rated capacity for a unit whenever you're running on the 110 volt side because you're processing that through an inverter itself. So there's minor losses there that you have to keep in mind, but that gives you a good general idea. And I tend to trust these countdown timers on these, maybe not to the T, but close enough. So I could run that compressor continuously for 2 hours. That's just not how these things run. That's not how these saws run. If you're on a job site, you may have all these devices plugged in here. Run over to your table saw or chop saw, cut a piece of wood, go over and do some nailing for a little bit. Then this kicks on, runs for what, 30 seconds to fill it up. It kicks off and now you're back to pulling no power. So you could, I don't know, you could get a full day of work done depending on how much cutting and how much using of these appliances you do. That's pretty awesome. So since I'm already on the porch and have all these things to test, as you can see, this is an actual active job site right now. While I work on our outdoor kitchen over here, I use this fan all the time. Let's just see how long it could run a fan. By the way, this has a relatively large motor on it and is a very powerful fan. So on speed 1, let's see how much power it pulls and how long it estimates it would run. It's saying 130 watts and could run this fan for 11 hours straight like that. So So the other places I could see people using these is like if you're an event planner, weddings, things like that, maybe a photographer, and you're doing stuff off-site somewhere, need to power up lights, fans at a, at a venue, things like that. This much power could run tons of lights and fans for hosting an event somewhere that just doesn't happen to have shore power hookup, or in a situation like that, especially a wedding, you probably don't want to be running a gas generator out there anyway, so you could run something like this completely silent. Now, for all the people that tend to usually comment on these videos, hey, you're being a salesman for this, that, and other, just so y'all know, I don't work for this company, and I really don't care how this review comes out. They may not want to hear that, but like I tell all companies that send products out for testing, I'm not doing an unboxing, I'm going to do actual testing, and if I find issues with the product, I'm going to say it. Whenever I accept a product, I'm allowed to leave a positive review, a negative review. I don't sign anything, and I will never accept a product from any company that tells me up front that I have to leave a positive review. My stipulation always is, if your product deserves a positive review, I'll leave it. So let's keep doing some testing and see. And I'll go ahead and address the fact, a lot of people are going to say, for the money that these cost, you can go buy a more powerful gas generator. That is very true. But not everybody is looking for a gas generator. You may live in an HOA area that doesn't allow you to run generators and make noise in a power outage situation. You may live in a high-rise or a condo, things like that. And a lot of people just don't want to fool around with a gasoline engine, have a gas generator that sits up forever. Then when you go to use it, maybe the carburetor's gummed up, maybe it doesn't run. A lot of people just really don't want to deal with that. This unit, charge up, put in the backside of the closet, the power goes out, or you need to go work on something somewhere, it's ready to go. There's nothing to fuel up, there's no oil change, anything like that. So this is a room out of my shop where I have a 5,000 BTU window unit. I love doing air conditioned unit tests with devices like these. By the way, excuse the chirping, I have baby chicks in here and a brooder. So a lot of people are curious about these for power outage situations, and us especially living in Florida, a hurricane state, AC is critical whenever we lose power. Sometimes you're without it for days. So just having one comfortable room in the house, or being able to sleep at night with a little bit of AC running for a little bit, keep a room comfortable, it just keeps people sane. So let's see how long this will run. I know this won't have a problem starting this. I've started this with much smaller units in the past, but I have a fully charged unit now. We're going to power it on. I'm going to fire this AC up. Now I will let you know, I'm only going to run the AC around 80 to 82 degrees. This is an uninsulated room out in my metal shop. I just checked, it's 95.6 degrees outside. It's already hot in this room, no longer than I've had this off. So it's pretty much gonna cycle it and run a lot throughout the day to day, just like it would in your home if you just lost power, hurricane just happened, things like that, and you wanna run this. And I will also take this out of energy saver mode. It'll run the fan a lot more, use more power, since you may have a model that does not have that feature. All right, so that test that y'all just seen me run on this, that was actually done yesterday. I've had this device for a few days and I've been running full tests with it. So long story short, I actually wound up turning this down to 78 degrees as soon as I started that test. It ran the AC with no problems as expected with this small of an AC. And like I said, with me putting it on 78 degrees, it pretty much stayed engaged and ran the entire time. Came out here about 6 times and only one time had the compressor kicked out because the room had got to temperature. All the other times I came out here, it was engaged and running. It was almost 100 degrees in the shop yesterday, so extremely hot. So long story short, I got 3 hours and 40 minutes exactly of run time before the unit died with this right here, and that's with the compressor engaged the majority of the time. Had I bumped the air up to say 80s, which is still very comfortable, maybe while you're waiting on power to get restored at your home, I think I could have got 4, 5 or more hours, because whenever this goes into fan mode, it pulls practically no power from the unit, very low wattage, but whenever the compressor's engaged is when you pull in the majority of your power. So keep that in mind. You can change temperatures on things to really extend your run time. So excuse the noise from all of our baby chickens over here. We just hatched them out. We're getting ready to put them in an outside coop. So that's all the racket that you're hearing. So we are actually in my outside shop, and one common question I've always got is, can you run a microwave? I've never tested one before. This is a good unit to use that with. A lot of people RV camp may be interested in this. Van camping is becoming extremely popular nowadays. Those are people, again, that probably don't want a loud noise gas generator. You can actually run this inside your residence. It doesn't emit any emissions, anything that can harm or kill you like a gas generator. So the microwave, I believe this is a 1000 watt model if I remember correctly. So this should have no issues running that. The problem is when the microwave initially starts up and surges, it can pull quite a bit of power. So I'm gonna watch the display here. We're gonna hit start. Kicked it right on. All right, we just shot up to 1228 watts. So even though this is rated as a 1000 watt unit, look, it's pulling 1225 watts. So if I were to continuously run this microwave, it says it can run it for 80 minutes. That's a ton of power that it's pulling. But keep in mind, you're only gonna microwave something 1 or 2 minutes, cuts off, this is back doing just fine. But it's running it no issues. So another very popular test and request, and one of the main reasons I believe in a unit like this, is to save food. In our deep freezers and refrigerators, we literally have as much money in food at certain times as almost what one of these units cost. And we're talking about going in and starting to go in on halves on a cow and butcher a cow. And if you add that up, how much meat could be stored at one point in time, it actually is what one of these costs. So anytime I feel like if one of these were to save that amount of food, it's kind of almost paid for itself. I've did enough testing in the past, y'all seen it, deep freezers are extremely efficient and they don't pull nowhere near the power and definitely don't have the startup surge that my refrigerator does. So I just tested a 1000 watt unit a few months ago, and it 1000 watt continuous 2000 peak, and believe it or not, it wouldn't start my refrigerator compressor up, but it did just fine on a deep freezer. So we're gonna test the refrigerator today because I know this right here will have zero issues with this deep freezer compressor. So what I'm gonna do is engage the compressor over here and let's see what happens. All right, you've seen the light just flicker, compressor is on. What's funny is it's only showing 120 watts now that the compressor is settled out, but that initial surge, at least on this particular model refrigerator, is insane. Like I said, it kept tripping out that last unit. That's absolutely no problem with this. So here's the cool thing. It's saying it could run this refrigerator right now for 12 straight hours. That's with the compressor engaged. And what I always have to remind people is, especially on a deep freezer, once you get them to temp, the compressor is going to cut off and you're pulling zero power. Now this unit's just in standby sitting there. And because a deep freezer tends to hold all of its cold air in, cold air sinks, and you hardly ever open these, the compressor doesn't cycle on very often at all. You could literally probably keep your food safe for a few days with one of these. Now the refrigerator is going to be a little different. They're not as efficient as a deep freezer. Most people are going to be opening and closing them, but still the compressor is not always going to run on a refrigerator. So you're going to get far longer run time than this 12 hours it's telling me right now, again, because the compressor is going to be cycled off a lot of the time. So here is another item that I have never been successful in getting to run on one of these power supplies before, and that is a shop vac. So if you're working off grid somewhere, doing some construction, chances are you're going to have one of these on the job site too. This is a 4 horsepower peak Stanley vacuum cleaner, and the last unit again was a 2000 watt unit that I tested, peak 1000 watt continuous, so half this power. It wouldn't even attempt to start this up. So I've got it plugged in. Let's see. So that's awesome. I have yet to find anything to trip this out. It said it would run that continuously for 2 hours. It was pulling over 650 watts, so probably closer to 3 hours. And keep in mind, this unit's already discharged several percent for all the other tests that we've been running. So probably close to 3 hours it could run this. Nobody's going to be vacuuming that long though. It's just that initial surge and startup of this motor was tripping my other units out, but this one has the surge capacity to handle it. So this is a feature that I was really excited to see on one of these devices. And like a lot of people point out, yes, these cost quite a bit more than a gas generator, so I expect a lot more features than a gas generator offers, from the solar charging input, all the outputs for the phones, and this UPS feature. I'm really excited about that. That allows you to invest in a device like this, and while it may be for a certain scenario, off-grid occasional work, occasional power outages, at least it can be giving you some of your money back and working around the clock as a UPS. And that's probably how mine is going to be. By the way, all the testing that we just done has dropped the battery percentage to 97%, so 3% of the capacity is gone for all the tools, microwaves, and everything else you just see me run. While they didn't run long, thought I'd throw that out there before I plug this in. All right, so as soon as you plug this in, when the unit is on, you'll hear it click, and it goes into charging mode. So this is also another good time to point out, does it have pass-through capabilities? Meaning, while I'm charging, can you actually output and run a device? So yes, you can. And that's to be expected on a nicer unit like this. Okay, so one way to know that your UPS is functioning properly, my battery is 100% charged off, so there is no input coming from the wall to charge the unit, and it would also say supercharge right here. And you can see the unit is pulling in exactly what it is outputting to the TV. So if I unplug this from the wall, input should stop and it will only show output, because then it converts over to the battery power. So let's see if I unplug this power, if 0.1 of a second, so we're talking milliseconds here, is quick enough to keep this running. Let's see how quick this switchover is. All right, plenty quick enough to function as a UPS. So you can see here, no longer pulling input from the wall, showing 0, only output. So it converted over to the battery that quick enough that the TV did not cut off. Now I'm impressed with that. I think a lot of other companies should be offering that on these particular items, especially for what they cost. So let's just face it, they're not cheap by no means, but you do get a lot of features. But a UPS is just an extra awesome selling feature, I think, for a device like this. All right, well, hopefully y'all enjoyed that review. Thanks to Oukitel for sending this out. I love testing items like this. By the way, if there's something else you would like to see tested, as long as I have it here at the house, drop a comment down in the comments beneath the video, and I'll check it out for you to make for sure that it'll run it, give you an estimated time, whatever it is that you're specifically looking for. Now, there's a million other things that I could have tested, but there's no point in testing a bunch of smaller items that we've already tested time and time again. No doubt this will run it, and it'll run it for far longer than anything else I've ever tested on the channel. So I love the capacity, love the output of this. I'm impressed that it ran everything that I asked it to, and I really do like the UPS function as well. It just gives you so many more features than some of the other units that we've tested in the past on the channel. If you're interested in this unit, there's links down in the video description. Go check them out, and then you can review further specs. By the way, Oukitel's website also has a bunch of different appliances on there and estimated run times. If there's something you're very curious about, like a coffee maker and things such as that, you can look at the wattage on there. And don't forget, this is a 2,000 watt-hour unit at full capacity. You do lose some of that through inverters and transferring things over, the type of device that's plugged in, if it has a motor versus just a steady constant draw. But what you can do is take that 2,000 watt-hour capacity and divide it by the watts of whatever item that it is that you're curious about that you're testing. All right, thank y'all so much for watching. A lot of y'all asked for me to pick up a more powerful unit and test. Here it is. With everything I'm seeing, I definitely recommend this for an emergency preparedness or backup item or that off-grid situation, now that I can see that it can run any power tool that I have. Thanks for watching.